It's not a flawless victory, but it was definitely a good time. All right, what's up, everybody? So this is my review of Mortal Kombat II. It's, of course, the continuation of the first Mortal Kombat that came out, but they definitely did something a little bit different this time around. I've been a Mortal Kombat fan since the 90s. Even the movie from 1995, I think it's an amazing artifact of 90s action movies. And even though it has all the corny and cheesy aspects of video game adaptations at that time, there is still a classic element to it. The fact that they tried really hard to make a cohesive, comprehensible story around it, I think was admirable, yet not necessary and not well executed. But what I really appreciated about it is two things. One, it still knew what it was. It was very heavy on the tournament aspect from the video game. And also, who can forget that timeless and classic Mortal Kombat techno music theme? I mean, it's been the one thing that has lived on, whether you're a fan of the video games or the movie. But this time around, I thought they did something great and actually unique in the sense of they took the elements of what worked in the first movie that came out and they really dissected it as to what worked and what didn't work and actually fixed the things that didn't work, and it's unlike Hollywood. They just okay, let's just copy what it did. It made enough money. Let's just go. But this time around, it seemed to be some kind of, dare I say, respect for the audience. And so instead of, trying to be really character heavy and be very earnest and serious about who these characters are that we grew up playing as, for many of us, and say, look, this is a movie about martial arts fighting and these crazy, otherworldly dimensions and fighters and all of that. And so let's focus on that and not exactly, try and have it be, a taxi driver character piece, okay? That's not what we are. Let's stay what we are. But let's still have the kinds of characters that we care about as audience members and Mortal Kombat members, lovers. And so, for example, with Johnny Cage, even though in the original game, we only really knew that he was a former movie action star, but I like the way that they presented him, played expertly by Karl Urban, as he's kind of washed up, and is kind of aimless and doesn't really know, what he's going to do with his life. And now he has this calling to do something actually important, which is to save the world and save the realm, And he really kind of acts as, I liken him a lot to Jack Burton from Big Trouble in Little China, played by Kurt Russell, where even though he's kind of like the quote-unquote main character, the one that we follow most of the time, he really is just, the eyes of the audience, trying to figure out what the hell is going on, what his place is in everything, and then start to, make a plan to actually survive and hopefully succeed as well. And so I kind of appreciated that. So you really kind of stick with the Johnny Cage character. Really, I think the protagonist is Katana. She's kind of continuing her arc, from the previous movie. But I think handling it like that, it's great for the audience members, even the casual audience member, because now we don't necessarily have to do any homework. We don't have to have watched the first Mortal Kombat movie. We don't have to have, played any of the games, so we can just enjoy it as a movie and just a fun movie to, spend your time watching. The one small critique I have in it is, and it might be a bit nitpicky, but, in the beginning, the fight scenes, which in general, the fight scenes are really well done. In the beginning, the editing is a little too quick for my taste. It reminded me of watching one of the Jason Bourne movies, which FYI, I'm not a huge fan of. But in the second half of the movie, especially the last third, it really gets, more John Wick-y, where you can see what is happening in camera. You don't have to necessarily rely on stunt doubles the actors do. Karl Urban, I love you, but that's obviously not you doing those things. But as far as portraying the character and even some kind of those static martial arts moves, he's actually really good at. He's believable. But that's not you doing any flips or throwing any of those kicks. Okay? I'm sorry. I didn't believe that for a second. But as it goes along, you kind of like, all right, this person actually knows what they're doing. They have some background in martial arts. So it gets much more entertaining and believable in that sense. And then the other aspect that I thought was really great was the setting. It's not a thing like in the first Mortal Kombat movie, it's like so bare at times. Like obviously the budget couldn't meet the requirements of building an entire castle or something like that. But in this case, I don't know what they did, but it looks great. It's not completely immersive, but you can definitely kind of place yourself in that world for half a second. And so it was a really, really fun time. I appreciated it. Like I said, it's not exactly Oscar bait, but it's definitely fun. Anyway, those are my thoughts. What about you guys? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Smash that like button, click subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.